All right.
And you were scared that she had like so bad that
I didn't.
So,
yes.
today's kind of got three parts to it. What is progressivism and why is it different from anything that came before it in American history? That's number one. Number two is going to be good things that came out of progressivism. And number three is going to be the dark underbelly of progressivism. So, we're going to start by remembering that progressivism is one of these responses to industrialization that we've been talking about. We talked about populism in class. We looked at labor in an online video, and today we are going to be looking at progressivism, which is the middle class response to industrialization. What does the vast American middle, or at least big chunks of it at least, believe about industrialization? Now, progressivism is born. Progressivism's goal is to, quote unquote, do something about the downsides of industrialization. So Americans, industrialization is a good thing. Makes a lot of people really rich, raises the standard of living, reduces the cost of important things, and it has some pretty significant side effects, some of which we have talked about in here. Growing inequality of wealth, growing urban slums, pollution, corruption, immigrants having a tough time assimilating, inequality, poor factory conditions, long hours. If you get injured at work, there's nothing for you to do. You know, you get your arm chopped off at the factory, well, you don't have a job the next day, and you would better figure out something to do with one arm. So there are significant problems that people see in industrial society, and progressivism is the middle class approach, solution to these problems. Now, we're going to go down. The progressive movement kind of bifurcates very, very early on. In one sense, Whole House, for example, is a progressive thing. Jane Addams' Whole House, the settlement house movement. This is a very traditional American response. Why is Whole House, what makes Whole House, and the settlement movement in particular, very, very traditional in terms of how Americans solve problems? Kiani? No, go ahead.
Thinking that, like, because it was a way to welcome the immigrants, like give them a home.
Well, what makes it a traditional American response? You're right. That's absolutely true. Well, that's what it does, but that's not my question. My question is, why do we consider Whole House a very traditional way for Americans to solve problems? Not what they did, we know what they did, but why is Whole House a traditional American response, Alex?
Because I think it's because when they took the immigrants in and gave them a home, they gave them like a pool, so they kind of Americanized them. You know?
Well, right, that's exactly what Kiani just told us. The question is not, what did the Whole House do? The question is, why is what the Whole House did a very traditional American response to problems, Priya May?
You know, when they first came in here, like the new settlement or whatever, like the natives help the people
No,
coming.
I got this.
Folks,
I got this. I got this.
my question is not what was Hull House.
Got this.
We have 3 awesome answers as what was Hull House. Why is it a traditional American response? Kevin.
It's a traditional American response because we're trying to get their vote by,
Association.
It's an association.
I was about to say
It's a
assimilation.
private, non-governmental solution, thank you, to a problem. That Jane Addams saw a problem, and she got a bunch of other highly educated, rich, middle-class white women together and solved it. It's a traditional American association, like Hull House is an example. There's lots of other ones. A lot of people see the corruption in cities. For what?
That's the only one. She said she was going to give me off.
Call your mom?
Yeah, I had to do it through the office or else to get mad.
What are you
I was supposed to
talking
leave.
about?
I was supposed to leave today for birthday. So yeah. She said she was
Sit down. If your mom comes to get you,
No,
she'll
she's
call you.
supposed to go to the thingy.
Your mom told you in the middle of Mr. Soto's history class, go to the office and call me so I can pick you up.
No.
Can I please have Hector Meneses to the main office, Mr. Hector Meneses?
I saw the time, so then I was like, oh, shoes. I mean, I didn't want to say the word recording. So yeah, I have to call her.
For what?
I have to go somewhere.
She's not coming here.
I mean, I have to call her to remind her.
She doesn't need reminding.
Yes, she does, mister. Why do you have to do? Okay, fine, whatever. It's cool. It's cool.
Like, if your mom's gonna come to get you, she'll come and get you.
Alright, but she had to go to the office. Alright,
For
fine.
what? I don't understand.
Alright, fine, never mind. Just, I didn't know I had to explain myself. But of course, I feel interrogated.
You parade out of here every day. You're for coffee, for pizza. I gotta call mom.
I mean, okay.
Like if you need to call, you can text your mom from the annex. You don't need to waste 7 minutes gallivanting about the building to contact your mother. Anyway,
I like to gallop.
a big part of the middle class response, the progressive response to the problems of industrialization is very traditional American associations. Hull House, in response to the corruption, a lot of Americans form good government committees, and this is a very traditional American way to go. But we are not talking about this at all today. We have talked at great length about associations. We know what they are, we know how they work, they do a lot of good work. But a lot of Americans started saying that in the late 19th century, as a result of industrialization, this, great, good for Jane Addams, but not enough. That a lot of people started to say, we want to solve problems, so things like Hull House don't even have to exist to solve problems. And if you're not going to go down the line of an association, there's only one other way that you can go. And what way is that?
Government.
Government. Progressivism is going to argue.
Oh my God, where are you going with that?
Progressivism is going to argue that the problems of industrial civilization are so big that only government can solve them. That they are beyond the ability of normal people, beyond the ability of people working together as they had always worked together to solve problems in the past. So if you're going to use government to solve problems, what's going to happen to the size and scope of government? It's going to get bigger. Bigger government. It is a typical American belief, still, that the future goes in one direction and one direction only, and that direction is up. And much of our material lives reflect this belief. That we have lived our entire national life, pretty much, in a country that constantly gets wealthier. In a country where the standard of living always goes up. Where life expectancy always goes up. And we kind of have it in our heads that progress, which is the root of the word progressive, obviously, is the normal way that humanity moves. Well, a lot of progressives back at the turn of the century were worried that this arrow of progress was not going to continue pointing up unless they could solve the problems of industrial civilization, all those problems that we talked about. And this is where we're going to take this track down this road right now. The progressives come to believe, Kiani and all you people at the table who are moving around, writing things, laughing. Writing things is cool. Giggling, not so cool. Progressives believe in the power of reason. Progressives believe that here's a problem, we can identify and reason our way through this problem and find a solution. Based on science and reason. That the problems of society can be solved through the application of science.
They sound like socialists and liberals, like combined.
They are. That's what a progressive is.
They're like the ones. They're the ones that are like towards the social, but yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what they are. That the problems of society can be fixed by an application of science and reason. Here is a problem in society. Think of a problem in society. There's poor people. How can you fix poor people? Through an application of scientific beliefs, doing a scientific method, that you can do an experiment on society, that you can change society. Society can progress. That if you just know what scientific buttons to push, society will change. This belief is called pragmatism. The idea that people should do what works. To be pragmatic means to be, a person, my wife is pragmatic almost to a fault. Say, my wife, what do you want me to get you for your birthday? Nothing, don't spend any money. Let me get you something for your birthday. No, but my wife really would prefer to pay the gas bill than for me to spend, and she will not accept, and I won't get her one because I know she is the world's ultimate pragmatist in things like this. She's only concerned with the facts of the thing, the solution to the thing, the problem to the thing. A pragmatist, in his own mind at least, is non-ideological, is only interested in where the science leads, is only interested in solutions. A pragmatist, in his own mind, is only looking for solutions. If they come from Kevin, awesome. If they come from Zaneti, awesome. If they come from Carmen, awesome. If they come from Carla, awesome. Doesn't matter, as long as it works. That's what a pragmatist believes, at least in his own mind. Now, if we're going to take all the problems of industrial civilization and put them in the hands of a bunch of scientific, reasonable, pragmatic people, what have we gotten rid of?
Religion.
No.
What?
Yeah.
Partially.
Yeah.
What else have we gotten rid of?
Communists?
Okay?
Communists?
Conservatives.
If I say, here is a pile of the problems, here are the problems that are in the United States due to industrialization, and say, all right, all you scientists and pragmatists and reasonable, smart people who went to really good universities and have lots of letters after your name, you take care of it. What am I getting rid of?
Problems.
You doing work?
Go on.
Associations?
Go on. I mean, dancing around an answer here.
The government responsibility.
Democracy.
Oh, yeah.
I am democracy. That I am saying we are no longer going to be ruled by the people, by demos. Instead, we are going to be ruled by technocracy. Ruled by whom?
Smart. Intelligent.
By experts. The progressives were deep believers in rule by experts. That it's only people who are experts in food safety should be making rules about food safety. That only people who are experts in this, that, or the other thing should be making laws and rules for those particular things. And since we only believe in solutions and we don't care where they came from, this is a very, very different approach to problem solving than the founders set up constitutionally. This is a disrespect for democracy and a respect, because democracy means that the head professor at Harvard has the same power as the high school dropout from Arizona. That's democracy. This is what moron gives the high school dropout from Arizona the same say as the president of, the Harvard faculty. What we want, say the progressives, is rule by people who know what the hell they're doing. Rule by experts. It's very undemocratic. The progressives are very happy to have elections as long as the people vote for who? Them. And when the people stop voting for them, where's the problem? In what? In the people. Morons don't know the right people to vote for. This is the heart of progressivism. The idea that society is too complicated for Jose, and too complicated for Melissa, too complicated for all of us, and that society is better run, better organized, better set up, it's more efficient, etc., if it is run pragmatically, based on science, by experts and reason. That's progressivism in a nutshell. Some of the things they did, most of us in 2015 would agree were really, really good. Now, before we get into what they did, I want to talk about another thing that makes the technocrats and progressives a little different was their, heroes, not hero, that was kind of the wrong word, their inspiration, their influences, that's a better one. Traditionally speaking, do Americans look fondly at Europe? Not really. Why not?
Britain.
What's in Europe that Americans don't much like?
Monarchy.
Monarchy, radicalism, communism. established churches, hierarchies, conscription, violence, religious intolerance.
No constitution.
No constitutions, no liberty. In fact, the vast majority of Americans became Americans because they did what? Left Europe. Obviously, if they left Europe, they believed that there was something wrong with Europe. So traditionally, Americans looked at Europe and said, thank God we're here and not there. Some Americans, progressives especially, in the 19th century begin, for the first real time in American history, to look at America and say, and look at Europe and say, they got all the answers over there. And they specifically looked at Germany.
Deutschland.
Germany is an empire. It's ruled by an emperor, Wilhelm I. Wilhelm I has a chancellor by the name of Otto von Bismarck. Von Bismarck is the hero of many, many, many American progressives. And that's because of what Bismarck did. Now, Germany is not a free country. No one voted for Bismarck. Bismarck kind of made a deal, if you will. I'll ask, what do you think? Bismarck says to himself, I don't want these people in Germany ever getting rid of me politically. I don't want anyone voting. I don't want anyone doing this. I want to be Chancellor of Germany for a very long time. So what do you think Bismarck did to ensure such a thing? Was that right? Well, they didn't have any power. Germany's not a free country.
Do good things so they like them?
Yeah. Bismarck said, I'm going to make the people of Germany a deal. I'll give you a bunch of nice stuff, and in exchange, don't sit here and say that you want any kind of political power. It's a top-down, government-run social program that Bismarck does in Germany. Things like workers' compensation. You get hurt at work, the government will provide you with enough money to survive. Social Security. Bismarck's Germany is the first country to have a full system of Social Security. When you turn 60 years old, or 60 whatever it is, government will give you a check every week. Bismarck's Germany pays a portion of medical care, Social Security, workers' compensation, all these things in exchange for the people of Germany doing what? No, they're not allowed to vote.
Oh, working.
Stop asking for power. Good, Louis. That Bismarck says, if I just keep the people of Germany happy, they won't sit there and yell and complain for the rights to vote and other things like that. American progressives love Bismarck. They're in love with Bismarck. Because Bismarck, to them, is the very ideal of what government should do. Bismarck surrounds himself by experts. He's not constrained by politics. Everyone who sits here and complains, I can't believe the president can't do what he wants because of Congress. Everyone who's ever had the wish that the president could just declare laws to be laws without Congress having any involvement, at heart is a Bismarckian. They want to have the authority to do whatever without the messiness of democracy. And American progressives look to Germany, look to Bismarck for inspiration. Top-down control without the messiness of politics and democracy, providing things that are reasonably and scientifically good for the people of the country. Bismarck's the big hero. Now, a lot of things, before we get to the nasty side of the progressives, let's talk about all the good things that they do. The progressives do a lot of things that today we would consider to be very good. ended child labor. The progressives passed laws saying that, you have to be this old to work in a factory. The progressives passed in states workers' compensation laws.
Is that the progressive woman?
Yeah, a lot of these things there's a lot of progressive women. They make government changes. They make social changes. They try to break the power of the machines. They bring about a degree of workers' compensation, pension schemes at the state level, laws regulating railroads, laws regulating the breaking up trusts. The progressive, and we don't have the time to go through every single success that the progressives had, but in your notes, in your reading, you should be able to discuss a half dozen at least of progressive successes. The antitrust laws, 17th Amendment, the Federal Reserve, which is really the third bank in the United States, trying to break the power of the machines, etc., etc. You should be able to talk about the successes that these progressives had at an electoral level. They run for office, they get elected. There are Republican progressives and there are Democrat progressives. It's a movement within both parties. There's 2 Republican progressive presidents and 1 Democratic progressive president. They all generally believe sort of the same thing. They were elected as progressives more than they were as Republicans or Democrats. So we have a lot of successes of the progressive movement. And when we kind of switch over to talk about the nasty part of it, which we're going to shortly, that should not make us unaware that in the United States, the progressives brought many things that today we consider to be good things. That no American today is ever going to get elected to office saying that the government should not restrict child labor. In a lot of things, the progressives had successes. Now, we should not imagine that the record of the progressives is a record of all sweetness and light. If society is constantly going to move towards this upward and forward goal, what does that mean about the people in this society? What do they also have to do? Go up and become better people. And this is where we get the progressive concept of eugenics. Now, eugenics is what? Who knows what eugenics is? What's eugenics?
I just remember reading about how people believe that the people who weren't fit shouldn't reproduce. So
Exactly what it is.
So
That's it. That if we're going to make society better, then there is no room in society for people who are not contributing to society to add to the gene pool. Pretty much. And what you got in the United States was never on a massive scale, but certainly on a local scale, dozens of states had sterilization laws. Pretty much what they did was, if you came in contact with the state, either through prison or need for welfare or mental illness, they would take a good long look at you and determine whether you should have the right to reproduce or not. And very often they said no. And it stands to a very easy scientific analysis. Here's Paula the imbecile. She has a significantly below average IQ. She has been prostituting herself since she was 13 years old. She has been arrested several times. She has 6 children. They are all imbeciles. They all get in trouble at school. None of them is worth a damn. Paula's mother herself was an imbecile. And if we think about for a second think about for a second all of the money that Paula and her imbecile family are making the state spend. We gotta spend money to keep her in jail. We gotta spend money to keep her in a mental hospital. We gotta spend money to educate her dumb children. In what? The surgery doesn't hurt. She's probably too dumb to even recognize what's going on to her. What is the harm, socially, in putting her under anesthesia and just cutting her fallopian tubes? Doesn't hurt. If it's Mario the imbecile, we'll just cut his vas deferens, the little tube that leads from the scrotum to the penis. It doesn't hurt. No nerves when if you're under anesthesia. It just prevents the spermies from reaching the penis.
What?
It's not painful. And when Paula and Mario wake up, they can hump like chickens, hump like rabbits all day long, and there's never going to be another baby. This is, in the view of the eugenicists, a victory for everybody. Preventing Paula and Mario, our local imbeciles, from having children. Because, folks, I submit to you from a progressive point of view that if our goal is for society to constantly progress, if our goal is for society to constantly improve, why are we welcoming into the world a bunch of idiots that hold us back? All that Paula's... Shh! Can you please stop playing? Paula's children ain't ever going to cure cancer. It's been so this goes all the way to the Supreme Court. And the great progressive jurist Oliver Wendell Holmes, it was a decision 8-1 that the state of Virginia should be allowed to do sterilizations. He looked at this woman who was at the heart of the case and said, 3 generations of imbeciles is enough. Thank you very much. Because it was determined that this woman, Paula, in our little example, was much more of a drain on society than she was a benefit. Now, we're not going to kill Paula. We're not going to kill Mario. They can still do their life as they want. They're just not going to pass on their genes to the next generation. And before long, if all of the really, really imbecilic people are no longer having children, obviously society is going to improve. That's eugenics. Yes.
Don't you find it kind of ironic that when you think that our society, like right now, is basically a bunch of idiots?
I take personal exception to that. Speak for yourself. What Kevin is saying is that birth rates are higher amongst the less educated, which is true. But not by a huge amount. You ever seen the movie Idiocracy? Idiocracy is what Kevin just said. Idiocracy posits that smart people stop having children. So like in 100 years, everybody in the country is just an idiot. And like, I remember, it's a dumb movie. But there's a scene that pretty much like all people just sit down and watch television, and like the show on television is called Ow My Balls. It's like a show of people just getting hit in the balls, and like everyone sits down and watches this show. You ever seen like Top 20 Fun? That's pretty much what this is. Yes. So my point is, shh. Look, I don't want to give you the wrong idea. I don't want to give, but to a lot of people, with very reasonable, this is all science. We can do a very complicated cost-benefit analysis. People with IQs of under 80, how much they cost every year for the state to take care of versus how much economic activity they put out. And if we do an analysis like that, they're going to come out on the short end of that stick. And then it's a very short jump from that to, well, if we want to improve society, just don't let them have babies. That's eugenics. I don't want you guys to get the idea that this was happening by the hundreds of thousands and millions in America. It was not. By the thousands, yes. This was not an isolated incident, but it was not an incredibly common thing. Most of the time when it happened, it would be people who came in contact with the organs of the state, whether in prisons or in mental hospitals or at charity wards. And then experts, doctors would come in and determine that this person or that person was a good candidate for forced sterilization. And it happened a lot. Like I said, not constantly, but enough. What's the only argument against it?
Taking away your liberty, having kids.
It's not freedom.
It's more fundamental than that. Now, we take people's liberty away all the time. We take away, if you commit an assault, we're going to take away your liberty and put you in prison. That couldn't I make the argument that if we take people's liberty away all the time for committing a crime against society, right? Isn't Paula producing 7 imbecilic children just as much a crime against society as it is Paula killing people?
No.
I mean, that's the same moral argument, right? It's a difference in degree, not in kind. But if the argument to take someone's liberty away is that they're hurting society, Paula, by producing children that are going to be a ward of the state for their entire lives, I can very easily say that that's a crime against society. So what's the only possible reason to say no?
It's taking away their human rights.
Taking away, yeah, that somehow we're saying that Paula is not equally human to you. But here's the problem with that. Here's Paula the imbecile. Have a good look at her. She is not equal to us in any measurable way. She's dumber, she's stupider, she's got more of a lower IQ. So what's the only way that we can declare her to be equal? Hang on, folks. This is fundamentally a vital question. Here's Paula. She is not equal in any observable way. What is the only... What?
Please. I'm sorry.
What is the... Why?
Because she was born.
So, where can you... Okay, she was born. So what? Where can you find a justification to treat Paula or the Down syndrome kid? Where do you find the moral justification? Because they're not equal. Where must they be equal? Where do you have to find this equality? Yeah.
I was missing genes, but never mind.
No, her genes are screwed up.
Yeah, exactly.
What's the foundation of your equality? The only one. There's only one.
Being American.
Maybe life.
What?
Life.
You're alive,
The 3.
and because you're alive, what do you get?
The life pursuit and the pursuit of happiness.
As given by
God.
you can't. I don't think. And if you'd like to try, I'd like to hear you try to do it. I don't think you can make an argument for equality that does not involve the idea that we are all created equal in the eyes of God, and that no matter how dumb Paula is, she still has the same rights of life, liberty, and equality as the rest of us. But here's the problem. That is not
Science.
That is not a scientific argument. That is a metaphysical argument. That is an argument above and beyond the physical world. And if we're going to be a bunch of people who are inspired and driven by science and pragmatism and expertise, then the person who says, well, wait, she has an equal soul given by God, that person is just an unscientific, old-fashioned, superstitious part of the past. Not part of our glorious, progressive future. Now I'm going to make we're going to take this even in a worse direction. Much worse. Okay. Now, folks, if I am saying as a progressive that if you do what the science and the progressives say, we will constantly improve, it stands to reason that one day we will improve so much that what will happen? What? What? And what would that be?
Enlightenment. Transcendence.
What do we call that? What's perfect? That if we're constantly improving, we must apparently one day reach a place that is perfect. A utopia. Folks, I'm going to submit something very serious to you right now. This thought is literally the most dangerous thought human beings have come up with in the long history of human beings coming up with dangerous thoughts. Why? Well, if I promise that if you do as I say you should do, one day we will reach the perfect future, then by definition, anyone who says, maybe not, is an enemy of what?
Progress. Society.
An enemy of this perfect place that we as a human society are going. Here we all are. We're heading for utopia. The science tells us. The plan tells us. And here's Carla saying, I don't think so. Hang on a second. Are you going to let Carla stand in the way of perfection on earth?
No. Not Carla.
No.
And if Carla, this weird, superstitious, old-fashioned, strange person who's going to stand in between you and me and our glorious future, what can we do?
Kill her all.
Kill her.
That's the first time.
Let me ask you a question. Zanaidi. If I said to you, Zanaidi, if you say yes, I'm going to give you a choice, right? We're going to give Zanaidi a choice. If Zanaidi says yes to our choice, one person that she will never met and has never met will instantaneously die a painful death. And in exchange, Zanaidi, poverty throughout the world will forever be gone. Yeah.
There's one person risking it.
He's one person.
Just one. Okay. All right, Zanaidi.
A million. Billions.
What about two, Zanaidi?
What if they were related to?
She doesn't know. She doesn't know.
Five. Where's your line? Where's your line? How many people are you willing to kill? Four? Four, but not five. Four completely random people can die painful deaths, but not five. The hell's the difference?
I know one person that like.
If I said to John, if your mother drops dead of a horrible, painful thing today, and in exchange for that, no one will ever die in war again. I don't want you to answer that, John. Neither does your mom. But folks, I want to illustrate to you the power of that sort of thinking. That if I can convince you, that if I can convince you that I have the magic bullet, that I can bring us to utopia, and it's just this person over here that's standing in the way. Look, Zanetti already argued that she would murder 4 people.
The way he says it.
Folks, yes, and Zanetti, if I had picked anyone else, they very likely would have said the same thing, but I just turned Zanetti into a Nazi. I did.
You really did.
I turned Zanetti into someone who says, you know what? These 4 Jews are worth the cost of my utopia. These 4, these 40, these 400, these 4,000, these 4 million.
6 million.
That if I can make the same, I turn Zanetti into a communist, killer. That if we just kill, these rich people, if we just kill these people who don't believe in communism, then here we will be at utopia. Folks, this is the most dangerous thing. Fundamentally, what you have done here, if you take the progressive belief out to its logical conclusion, as billions of progressives did, what you are doing is you are turning man into a god. Because religion has always promised this. What progressivism does is it promises this on earth, in our lifetime, if you just do what I said. We can count the deaths caused by Nazism, communism, fascism, socialism, and it numbers in the hundreds of millions.
Oh.
That's the dark underbelly of this progressive movement. That it posits that you can have perfection on earth. And if you posit perfection on earth, then anyone who is standing in the way of that perfection is obviously an enemy of perfection. And who in their right mind would be an enemy of perfection? No one. They must be in their wrong mind. And therefore, we can justify taking their rights away, putting them in camps, and eventually putting a bullet in the back of their head. It's an easy thing to do. I want you to think about how easily I just turned Zanetti into a Nazi killer. It's scary. Really. Because all that, most of you would have said yes.
Oh, God.
Most of you would have said yes.
I would have said it.
And the thing about it is that you never know if it's really going to happen.
It's a hunting point. Yeah, I know you would have said that.
It's not really fun at all. Look, obviously it never gets here in the United States. But it gets here in Russia and Germany and other places like that. Hitler and Stalin and Lenin don't promise death and destruction for everyone. They promise utopia for everyone. And all we have to do to achieve that is get rid of the people who are standing in between us and that utopia. Any questions on